Hello everybody, it's Josh Riley here. Today I'm making a video because I have to do a project, and this is a shameless way for me to play video games while doing it. Today I want to talk about a game that's very artistic and shows a lot of rebellion against social norms. And for my projects, I have to relate it to French and Indian colonists. So, step by step, I'll show you everything I mean when I say this. Now, first of all, this video is less on the game and more on the creator, Edmund Macmillan, but sort of both. Basically, why I think Edmund is very much like the colonists is because he really is not necessarily trying to go against any type of authority or any type of institution, but what he's trying to go against is norms and social constructs, or even just regular everyday things. So, why I say this is because every single little piece in this game, in games that he makes, are always very dark, they're very gritty, and you probably understand that just from what I'm showing now. But besides that, it's meant to be, lighthearted. Although as gritty as possible. But although as dark as it might be, or everything that happens in the game, there's a story behind it, and that story involves a type of free speech. Now, why I say this is because if you actually go in depth and look at interviews or look at the story in general, and compare the two, you get to notice that this is more about fears and constructs or things that happened to the creator that have been sort of incorporated into the game, although not exact replicas, because I'm sorry, but Edmund Macmillan has probably not been stuck in a basement forced to fight flies and living feces. But anyway, a lot of stuff happened, says Edmund Macmillan. Stuff with drug abuse and whatnot, which is seen through some of the cutscenes, which is seen through effects of some of the cutscenes in the game, and and things that have happened to his family. And a lot of them is expressed, although not very upfront, but surely expressed in the game. So why do I think he is like the colonists, you might be asking? Well, one simple thing. His endurance to create something that's against all normal reasoning. Now, first of all, his games are always dark and gritty, which for the time, remember, he created games all the way back in 2001, just like this. In fact, ones that are a lot worse, I'm not even thinking of picking up, because I think I'm going to be sent to hell. I mean Hot Topic, I mean hell. But anyway, a lot of stuff he made is stuff called Dead Baby Makeover, or things like that. And like, although I don't exactly agree with making a video game about dead baby makeovers, his reasoning to make games like that and make 5 games in a row, or make what he wants when he wants and tell a story that he may not even want to tell in the process is such a showing of free speech and art that it's very just hard to go through with those things. And it's not rebelling against a person or anything, but for the time it was rebelling against social constructs. Now the reason I say this is because back then we were into the norm was being into kid-friendly games like Banjo-Kazooie about like a cartoon bear and his friend who's a cartoon bird, or things like and the ones that were adult games or that were very gritty and very gritty and, well, let's just be honest, just really dark and emo. But the ones that are that were that at the time, that weren't Edmund Macmillan's, were either always just subconsciously intended for children, like, or just like playing out the lightest, hardest shooters ever. Like Resident Evil, they always included dialogue that was meant to be hip 90s culture dialogue, and all this other stuff that they added in to make it less of a horror game, which, remind you, was the tag and was what they gone by, but more of just a selling point. Like, every single thing was a selling point. Now, instead of doing that, what Edmund Macmillan did was that he created a dialogue with that, and made something that was more fearful, he created a dialogue with his games which made it more fearful, more experimental, and of course more horrifying. Although, to be honest, if you're me, you don't really think a game about shooting tears at people is very horrifying. But I digress. What I'm trying to say is that at the time and still going on, there's still not a lot of things that are in depth in this culture, that are like this in our culture. But the thing is that what Edmund Macmillan also did is that he also had this constant endurance. Now, as I said, his first game was in 2001. But you know how many games he created with almost 0 pennies dropped, or almost nothing happening to him that could no fame or nothing to be gained from it. He made 5 games in that year alone, and he's been continuing at that rate since 2010. And that's only at that rate. And that's where this game was made. And basically, his constant endurance is something that makes him more like the colonists. Instead of going by and trying, sorry, it's hard to talk. Instead of going by and trying to do oh my god. Instead of attempting to make something making something that's always very PG, or that's always just intended for children or something like that, even if there's a big M on it or something. That's just really what brings him to, instead of rebelling against like the people like the people like people people like the people like the people in Britain. Instead of that, he's going against social norms and a lot of things that for the time had no place in the culture. And they still did during then because his games were barely noticed. But he kept going on and going on until he made a game that was actually successful with the people. That's really all I gotta say.